he was bigger than boxing.
I am the greatest.
The price of freedom comes high. I have paid, but I am free.
Muhammad Ali. Tune in or stream. Starts Sunday, September 19th at 8, 7 Central, only on PBS.
The last time I talked to your father was about your film, The Central Park Five. Since your footage was subpoenaed and Donald Trump subsequently became president, what does the whole case, in your opinion, say about the America that both brought subpoenas against the filmmakers and elected a person responsible for the wrongfulness of the outcome?
Yeah, that's a great question. It's pretty demoralizing, isn't it? I mean, the outcome of that case when we were subpoenaed was that the judge found that we are journalists, that we were independent in our work and therefore entitled to those protections, the shield laws in New York. And so we did not have to turn over our materials to the city, which is good news and good news for journalists everywhere. But right, the fact that Donald Trump, who is a villain in that story, and at the time was just, the real estate developer. I mean, when we made the film, was still just the real estate developer and, page 6 staple Donald Trump, that we then went on to elect him president is unfortunate. I think we've all known who he was, what kind of person he was for a long time. And that's certainly evidenced in the way that he spoke about and wrote about in that ad he published, those 5 men, those 5 kids at the time. We saw that borne out in his presidency of anger and hatred and discrimination.
The next question is going to be about this, which I stare out every day.
Oh, wow.
Jackie Robinson was a more complex man than history has made him out to be. Besides the promises he had to make in integrating baseball, what do you think were his other indignities in trying to mainstream Black America into the society of his times?
Yeah, it's a great point. Jackie Robinson, I think, has become famous for this idea of turning the other cheek, which he did. Right? This was part of his agreement with Branch Rickey. I think both men understood that for this experiment, as it was called, to work, that was necessary. It was necessary for Jackie not to fight back. But what we often forget is that was only for a short period. That was really just, in his year in the minors and his first year in the majors. And after that, he could be more himself. And the reality is that Jackie being himself was not someone who was going to stay quiet, let the indignities roll off his back. He was going to respond. He was going to fight and argue. And, what happens is that after he begins doing that, arguing calls with umps, he's very competitive, like any, serious athlete, right? That some of the press and the people who had reacted really positively to him in 1947, oh, isn't this nice? He's integrated baseball. What a, dignified, respectable man he is. Suddenly don't like him anymore because he's showing off his true self, which is someone who is not content to just kind of get his foot in the door, but he is going to try to knock that door down. And now he's going to challenge the segregation at the hotels where they stay when they travel for where they play their games, right? And he's going to make a stink about it when that's not right. And he had other teammates, some of the Black players who came along behind him, people like Roy Campanella, for example, who famously was less interested in that kind of confrontation, who was more Campanella seemed to, and he said this, that he was just happy to be there and he wasn't going to kind of challenge these other indignities. Whereas Jackie Robinson was, and he did. And it often did not earn him more friends. But he was prepared to do that. I mean, I think that's another form of that courage we were talking about with Muhammad Ali. Here's a guy who has reached this point, this pinnacle here. He's made it to the majors and it's this great thing. And he is not going to just sit there and rest because he has a chance to make things better for other people and to insist on true first-class citizenship.
Well, finally, what did you see in yourself in your study of Muhammad Ali that surprised you and perhaps has made you a different person than you were before?
I was talking about this a little bit before, but I'm really most inspired and moved by Ali's courage. And I think, I knew that he refused induction and everything, but just coming to understand how much he risked, how much he gave up. He was not the same fighter when he came back after 3.5 years. He did lose that ability that he'd had there in those fights in the late 60s. Before his exile, and he had to learn different ways to win fights after that, and he took a lot more punishment after that. And just understanding that courage, what he was prepared to do as a young man, is really, I find, inspiring and really moving. The other thing I learned about Ali that I admire so much was that way that he gave himself so generously. So you hear him saying, I'm the greatest and I'm pretty and all this stuff. And you go, that's ego, that's narcissism. But the reality is that, and that's true too, sure. The reality is that he was also telling other people, he was telling Black people, I'm pretty and so are you. I'm the greatest and so can you be too. And that means something. And when he encountered people and made people feel connected to him and seen and made them feel special in every encounter, I think he took from that as much as he was giving, but he understood the impact that he could have on other people. And it's why, as soon as we started this project, everyone we talked to had a Muhammad Ali story. And it made me feel like it's his greatest talent. More so than his boxing talent was that ability to make other people feel special. And that's something that you do not see very often.
And we could all use more of it in our lives, right?
We could all use more of it in our lives. That's for sure. We could all aspire to be more like that in our lives.
This is Patrick McDonald for HollywoodChicago.com. Copyright 2021.